Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today. We are so excited to talk to you about CNC automation with cobots and machine vision. My name is Julia. I'm the product marketing manager at Groundlight AI, and I am here with our robotics engineer, Tim Huff.
Hello.
Tim, how long have you been working with UR and in general, just robotics?
With UR, it's coming up on 2 years. We're a UR Plus partner, so that means we have an approved integration on the Universal Robots platform. We run on Polyscope 5, and we're running on Polyscope X now as well.
Yeah, and we can tell you a little bit more about the differences between Polyscope 5 and Polyscope X. Today we'll be mainly focusing on Polyscope 5, but we can certainly give you some updates and insight on Polyscope X, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So we'll let people continue to trickle in, but please feel free to drop any questions in the chat. We'll be focusing primarily on universal robot cobots, but that is to say you can probably translate this to any type of cobot, really. But we have specifically a machine vision integration with universal robots, so we're going to be focusing on that today. So before we get started, whoops, let me move my mouse. Just wanted to also highlight that Tim will be at the Automate show, which is coming up next week, which is really exciting. And he'll be at the Orbec booth on May 12th, that Monday and Tuesday morning. So if you're going to Automate, let us know. We'd love to meet you in person. Tim will be demoing Groundlight on the Universal Robot at that show. Anything else you want to add about Automate?
No, just that it will be in the Orbec booth, which is the camera company that Universal Robots is partnering with on their new AI accelerator platform. So the demo in Detroit is going to be about that AI accelerator and Polyscope X and kind of all the new latest and greatest features that Universal Robots and Groundlight are providing.
Yeah. You went to Automate last year, correct?
Not last year.
Okay, not last year. Okay, so first time. It'll be great.
Yeah.
Super excited. So yeah, let us know if you're joining that. We'd love to meet you. And so another thing to add is today we're giving you an overview, but you are welcome to reach out to me. My email is julia@groundlight.ai. You can also reach out to Tim. It's pretty much tim@groundlight.ai.
Yep.
And we can hook you up with an in-person demo of the Universal Robot Cobot with Groundlight. So you can see it in person. However, if you have more detailed questions, feel free to set up a meeting with us and we can also go over that with you. We actually have a cobot here in the office. We'd be happy to show you how it works. So one thing to highlight is that we are a UR Plus partner. And what does that mean exactly? It means that if you go to the Universal Robots website and if you go to their marketplace, you can basically find our integration just on their website. Here's just a screenshot of what that looks like, and I will drop that link in the chat in case you want to look a little bit more on their website. We are considered a URCAP. Can you explain a little bit more about like the UR software system and the EcoPlace?
Yeah, so URCAP might be a term that's unfamiliar to some people, but it stands for Universal Robots Capability. And it's just a plugin that third-party developers can make on the UR system. So you download it, you install it, and it's just like a little app that you can add into your robot program. So in our case, it's called image query. So you drop in a Groundlight image query, and you configure a camera. That could be a camera that's mounted on the end of the robot arm or stationary somewhere else. And typically, you're just going to point that camera at your work cell somewhere. Maybe you're checking the placement of parts in a vise or something like that. And then you get to ask a question of Groundlight. The question can be anything. It could be, is the part placed correctly? Is it seated flat against the vise? And we're going to train a machine learning model that can answer that question for you. And then your robot can take action based on the answers to those questions.
Exactly. It's very dynamic. It's very flexible. And we'll show you some examples of what exactly that looks like. So here is a really short demo of essentially, this is in our office of a cobot taking apart and placing apart, and it's inspecting block placement, it's inspecting the vise. You can see that Groundlight is providing that almost extra layer of quality assurance. So here is an example of a block that placement that does not pass. And so you can see the camera is actually attached to the cobot right here. So again, as Tim mentioned, you can have the camera placed outside of the robot arm or placed directly on the robot arm. And so in this case, here's an example of pass, and that's an example of fail. And as it's moving, it's checking, is the pocket empty? If not, it's moving on. And then is the vise ready? And this is happening in rapid succession, right?
Yeah. This is, there's a few moments where it's sped up 2x, but for the most part, you're seeing real time here.
Yeah. So that's actually pretty cool. And the next demo I'm going to show you is from IMTS 2024 with laser etching. I think you can probably, since you...
Can I say one more thing about this one?
You may.
Yes.
You are allowed.
One of my favorite parts of this one was, and then maybe it's not so easy to see in this video, but it was also checking the orientation of the blocks. So these are like saw cut aluminum blocks. And in order for this application to work correctly, we need the extruded edge to be up, just because that's how the robot grabs the part, and then we want to put it into the vise that way. But as an operator, it's pretty easy to put those blocks into the pockets the wrong way, and it almost looks the same. So before we pick up the block, we check, is the extruded edge facing up? And if it's not, it'll actually just skip that block and move on to the next one. So you know that you're not going to be loading a block in the wrong orientation into your vise, even if someone may have made a mistake in the setup.
It's absolutely amazing that you can really tailor this to your workstation. And we'll tell you a little bit more about machine vision and kind of the other machine vision alternatives out there and how we're a little bit different. But let me also show you one more example at IMTS. If I can escape this page. Oh, here we are. Okay. So you're going to see a recognizable face because it's Tim in person. So he's at IMTS in 2024 and essentially just doing a little demo of how Groundlight with a camera placed externally as well as a camera placed on the cobot is checking for any anomalies.
For things like is the fixture
so checking if the fixture is correct,
is the part ready to
the
be
work
picked
cell
up,
clear
is
tools,
and
are the parts ready? So he's starting the robot arm from the touch pendant, checking if it's clear of any foreign objects, and aha, you have detected a foreign object in there, like a part, quote unquote, was left, right?
So something that doesn't belong in the work cell.
Yeah. So something had, and basically the cobot is notifying you straight from the teach pendant, right? And letting you know, like, hey, like something's happening.
Yeah, there's two ways you can set it up. You can set it up to pop up on the teach pendant, so the operator deals with the issue. You can also route it to a cloud operator. So that's one of our operators, sitting at a computer who will see the image. They'll see example images so they understand what the question is about. And you can also put in notes to the cloud operators to make sure they really understand the question.
Yeah, it's very dynamic. And so, you remove the tool, making sure everything is safe and ready to go. Now it's checking if it's the right type of block. Picking it up.
This is a different device. This is aluminum blocks.
Before we do that, we're inspecting the device, make sure the jaws are correct.
Okay, yeah.
But
so
now
making sure the jaws are correct, you're inspecting the device. You can see the cobot is basically moving the camera to make sure it has that clear view and it's checking. And now it's quote unquote running the CNC machine, right? Removing the block. Yeah, so now we're going to dive a little bit deeper into.
So we are Groundlight, and we're doing visual inspection and anomaly detection to make your cobot more reliable with real-world applications.
Okay, so a little bit about Groundlight AI before we dive a little bit into Universal Robots and Cobots. We are based here in Seattle, Washington. So if anyone here is on the West Coast, feel free to let us know. So hello from the West Coast. It's actually pretty sunny here in Seattle, which we're really excited about. And our two founders, Leo and Avi, have extensive experience from Amazon and Microsoft. We focus really on machine vision or computer vision. That is our bread and butter. That is our expertise. Our chief science officer, for example, has her PhD from MIT, and we have a lot of other brilliant minds in the office, Tim included. And aside from robotics and industrial manufacturing, we work in a variety of industries, from safety and facility monitoring to security, video management systems. So Universal Robots, our integration with UR, is one of the few places that we add machine vision or vision AI capabilities. So why is a UR Cobot the right choice for you? Why consider investing in a UR Cobot? If you have one, then you already know the answer. You're already enjoying the benefits of the UR Cobot. But if you're still considering one, then here are some things to consider. I think one thing that is amazing to hear is that Universal Robots has deployed over 90,000 cobots worldwide. So there are a lot of people who are very forward-thinking in their business, and they're already thinking about automation. And why have so many people deployed these cobots? A lot of it is because Universal Robots is a human-centered robotics platform. So a lot of people are afraid, like, oh, robots are going to steal our jobs, they're going to replace humans. And we're seeing that's not the case. Robots are working alongside of people. They are essentially, promoting the work of people, essentially. Complementing is the word I was looking for.
Should we explain the term cobot?
Yeah, actually,
Okay.
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, so typically Universal Robots describes their robots as cobots, which means collaborative robots. So the idea is that they are safe and easy to work with. So you can have an operator standing next to a robot arm, and if they bump into the arm, it'll trigger kind of an emergency stop, and the arm will stop, but it won't hurt the operator because the robot is moving at slower speeds and also has a lot of safety features to understand when it's colliding with a person and shut off. Not all robots have that. Typically, industrial robots move very quickly, they're dangerous, and they have to be put in a cage separate from people to avoid injury. So that's kind of the difference between an industrial robot and a cobot.
And we know that it has been very difficult to find labor these days. And you can either be the forward-thinking business that is thinking of how to automate its production processes, or you can be left behind. Whether you agree with the idea of robots or not, cobots are the future of manufacturing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So then the next question is, okay, what is the goal ultimately of a cobot, and why should you also include machine vision? Then really the goal here is really unattended operation. Cobots are amazing. Yeah, they are, Universal Robots especially, they are reliable, they work well. However, ultimately the environment around robots is unpredictable. You cannot always predict if a tool will be left in a work cell, or in this case, here's an example of a water bottle that has been left. And this can be the thing that can make a cobot less reliable. And so machine vision adds that extra layer of quality assurance. What are some other things that kind of pop up in the environment when it comes to a robot operating?
I think a lot of them fall under what I would call setup checking. So when you hit play on your CNC machine tending program, you have to have set up several things correctly for it to work. You have to put the correct jaws on your vise, all the different fixtures need to be in place, and there's a chance that maybe you forgot one of those things. So what Groundlight can do for you is at each step of the process, take a picture. Like, does this look right? Is this the correct fixture? Is there a block in the chute? Things like that. And then if it ever detects an anomaly, it's going to stop and kind of raise its hand and say, hey, I think this is wrong, and give you a chance to deal with it before it becomes a problem.
Exactly. So the cobots are working alongside of humans and complementing their work processes. And so why add Groundlight then to your Universal Robot cobot? We'll tell you a little bit about how Groundlight can be added to a cobot, but this is to highlight again that Groundlight is a certified URCAP ecosystem partner with Universal Robots. And as Tim just said, capture images from the camera and send it directly to Groundlight from the robotic arm camera. And essentially, we can build in visual answers into any of your automation workflow. And we'll tell you a little bit about common applications, but high level, high mix inspection and anomaly and mistake detection is a great application for Groundlight. So a little bit on machine vision. Many of you are probably already familiar with machine vision, but we'll tell you a little bit about how Groundlight's a little bit different than machine vision. So it's also known as computer vision, vision AI. So in this case, you start with having a camera placed either outside of the robot, facing the robot's processes, or the camera is placed directly on the robot arm. So here's an example of the camera placed directly on the arm. And I should say that actually Groundlight is camera agnostic. So for the most part, it integrates with most cameras. And this is an example of a Basler camera, but you've seen Orbit cameras, right?
Yeah, we've got Orbeck now. Just about any USB camera that you can plug in. Some of those work better than others in terms of these applications, but we have a list of cameras we recommend. Intel RealSense, and then also RTSP network cameras. And I also want to add that you can have any number of cameras connected. So you could have one on the robot arm, you could have one over the CNC machine, and oftentimes people will have at least 2 cameras involved in one application.
Yeah, which is great. And here's an example of a camera facing outside the process. And so this is obviously very simplified, very high level, but essentially a camera is recording the robot as it's moving. And it'll be sending frames, images to Groundlight. So for example, say it's inspecting this part and it's sending that image to Groundlight. Groundlight is analyzing that part. And as an example, if you're asking, does this part pass quality control or is this alignment correct? It will give you an answer in real time, pass or fail. So, and how is Groundlight's machine vision a little bit different than other machine vision solutions that you see out there?
Yeah, so there's a lot of off-the-shelf models that you can use nowadays, and they're pretty good at answering basic questions. Like they can identify people in a frame or cars or household objects. They might be able to answer some, yes/no questions as well, but they're not going to understand your CNC machine or what's going on in your industrial environment. So what we do is allow you to collect data that's in your robot cell and train a small, efficient model that can answer that one question. And it's fast too, so the results return. If you're connected to the cloud, that might be half a second. If you're running one of our edge models, that's going to be probably 500 to 100 millisecond response time. That can vary a little bit, but that's an approximate figure. So yeah, they're just small, efficient models that answer your specific questions.
That, and you really don't need any custom development for this. It's really as simple as you plug in the Groundlight compute module and you download the software. So we'll get a little bit into that as well. So as an example, everyone knows about ChatGPT at this point. And here's an example of how Groundlight's a little bit different than ChatGPT. So ChatGPT, you can also ask it questions of images. For example, is the belt aligned with the fiducial? And it does say yes. It does give you the correct answer. But how do you really know that ChatGPT is really looking at the right thing? So our chief science officer did this experiment, and she asked ChatGPT this question. It responded yes, and then she asked, okay, tell me what part of the image you are looking at to answer. And it turns out it was looking at this part of the image, so this red box. So this is to say that it didn't do so well in this task. Versus Groundlight, it does identify the right location in the image, and it does give you the right answer. So I don't know if you wanted to elaborate on this. You've been tinkering around with as well.
Yeah, so that's a good example, but I would also add that ChatGPT would be considered a more expensive model, both computationally and financially, and it takes longer to return. So if you were to integrate something like that into your cobot, it's going to take, I don't know, several seconds to respond. So right there, that's kind of eating into your cycle time. And then, like you said, Julia, you don't even know if the answer is going to be right. Does it understand? Yeah, so then the other thing is confidence calibration. With ChatGPT, it doesn't say, oh yeah, it's aligned and I'm 90% sure. But Groundlight does. So it's going to come back, Groundlight returns an answer and it'll tell you how confident it is. And then based on that confidence, you can do escalation. So if you get below a certain threshold, maybe you want it to pop up on the teach pendant and ask the operator for help. So I think that's really key when you're talking about reliability in an application.
Exactly. And I just wanted to pause in case anyone has any questions. Again, please feel free to drop them in the chat. The benefit of having a live session, of course, is you can ask us live questions. So checking if anyone has any questions. All right, I don't see any. Okay, I'll proceed, but I'm keeping my eye out in the chat if anyone has questions. So here's a broad menu of what you can do with Groundlight. We've talked about how it makes your cobot more reliable, but what exactly are the things that you can ask of Groundlight? And so in pink are highlighted, or purple are highlighted the different queries you can ask, the different steps, and then in gray is the action. And
I just want to make it really clear that these are examples. So
yes.
Any question that you want to ask that could be answered by a human, you can do with Groundlight. These are just some of the common ones that we see.
Yes. And in machine tending, this is what it would look like if you were to be checking if the vice setup is correct. You're checking to see the jaws are correct. You're checking to see that it's clear of chips. And here's an example of a pass, correct jaws, works, it's completely clear. And however, here are 3 examples of fail. This is a quote unquote foreign object. Maybe a tool has been left there.
Yeah, so I think the idea of that one is that's a part that was left over from the previous iteration. Maybe the arm didn't drop it when it was trying to remove it. So when you come in with the next part, you don't want to see something like that because you're not going to be able to place the new block. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, we had someone reach out from the chat just saying hello back. Let us know if you have any questions. So great. And so another type of question that you can ask is the part correctly presented to be picked up? So in this case, part is there, it's ready to go.
Yeah, so this is the one I was mentioning earlier, and you can see in the bottom right corner, that's the wrong orientation. So you see the
it's like stripes.
So that's actually like a machined edge. But anyways, the surface that we wanted to see on top was the extruded surface. So the detector there was able to say, hey, that looks very different from what I normally see. I think that's wrong.
Very interesting, yeah. Okay, and another, I think we kind of actually talked about this already, but like here's an example of vice that is ready and vice that is not ready because there is obviously a hex key in there.
Oh yeah, I had to kind of get closer to see what was wrong. Yeah, someone left a tool behind on that one.
Yeah, but Groundlight can detect it. There you go. Another example, and this is more of a visual inspections, but you can say that if the part is not ready, that is a type of anomaly. Here's an example of LKQ, which uses Groundlight to detect defects, specifically to check is the colored link on the chain aligned with the fiducial on the gear. And so here are 2 examples of pass, 2 different examples. And so you can see the it's aligned. And here in this case, and it doesn't happen often with LKQ, but when it does, it's something that is obviously a problem. And actually what's really interesting for LKQ is the traceability aspect of it. The idea that when something happens, they can go back and document, and they have the documentation on that, and they can trace where it happened. And so essentially, by using Groundlight, they're able to catch the defects long before they reach the customer, and they can essentially ensure that there is that process improvement and also prevent those defects from happening at all. So here's an example of the dashboard that they see. Essentially, you have queries of the yes, you have the no. They also have access to inspection reports where they can see instances of passes and fails.
They told me once that was actually one of their favorite features, just having the record of all the engines and all the different inspection points in PDFs that they can look up. Because sometimes there's a problem with an engine down the line and they get kind of accused, so to speak, and they can look up those PDFs and say, no, like everything passed, here's the pictures that were taken as we sent it off the line. So for them, it's just documentation too.
Yeah, which is crucial, especially in the automotive industry. You kind of want your parts to work.
Yeah, exactly.
Small detail there. So yeah, this is just to summarize. I'm not going to read this over, but this is to say that they can set up new inspections in under 10 minutes. 10 minutes. This is a perfect high mix example where, unlike other solutions where you have to do custom build for each line, in this case, it's set up pretty quickly.
Yeah, so by high mix, you mean that new engines are coming down the line a lot, right?
Yeah.
So basically, they're able to use Groundlight to just create a new detector for XYZ engine, and then feed it a few examples, and then it's ready to go, and it can start giving accurate results and learning on the job. So I don't know how often exactly, but probably each month they're adding several new engines, and those are just new Groundlight detectors.
Yeah, and when we say detectors, essentially we mean like a machine vision model. So
Yeah.
this is the fiducial marker in the gears properly aligned is a detector.
Right, but that one is for a specific engine. They create a different one for each engine, and it learns kind of the intricacies of that particular part.
Exactly, learns to your specifications.
Yeah.
And you can have actually multiple detectors on a camera.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So how does it work? I said that very forcefully. So, how exactly do you set up Groundlight on a universal robot cobot? And as I mentioned before, you choose whether to have multiple cameras, whether it's on the universal robot cobot arm or facing the universal robot cobot. So try saying that very quickly multiple times. And I'm going to walk you through high level, essentially, how the system learns to your specifications. This is how Groundlight learns what you consider to be a pass or fail for each detector that you create. So first, you set up the Groundlight compute module, and we'll tell you a little bit about what that looks like. And you download the URCAP, and you connect it to your cameras. And then you have access to dashboard.groundlight.ai, your own personal dashboard. And you today could create an account at dashboard.groundlight.ai. If you want to test out Groundlight without the universal robot cobot, you can do that. And essentially, you create a new detector. And you just type in natural language exactly what you are looking to detect. And in this case, you want to know, is the work cell setup correct? And this is a really interesting thing. So Tim mentioned before the idea of confidence, right? So unlike ChatGPT, which is saying like a yes or no, and it's confidently saying yes, Groundlight actually communicates to you when it's unsure. And so the reason why it does this is because you set the confidence threshold. And so what does this mean? This means that in this case, if I set the confidence threshold to be 0.87 or 87%, this means that if the system is ever less than 87% sure, it'll escalate to a real human in real time to confirm the correct answer. So an example of what that looks like. Oh, and just to note, once you set up your detector on the Groundlight dashboard, from the Teach Pendant itself, you can actually select the detector. And so you'll be able to see this menu here, and you can you can set up your detector and you can see your query. So that's pretty neat. But back to our example. So is the work cell setup correct? Here's a view of the work cell, and we see that there's an anomaly. And remind me what that is. So that's like a part left in?
No, that's just a wrench.
Tool.
So, people, operators have to go in there and adjust devices sometimes, and that's actually a common problem. You leave the tool in the device or somewhere in the machine, and that is absolutely something you don't want to happen, or at least you want to be aware of it before you run the machine.
Yeah, and let's say you've just started running Groundlight, and in the beginning, as it sees these kinds of things, it's going to detect this as an anomaly, right? So
yeah,
Groundlight says, I don't think this work cell is set up correctly, but I'm only 70% sure. And because it's 70% sure and not that set 87% sure, that confidence threshold that you set, it's going to say, I don't know how to answer this. And it's going to raise its hand and ask for help from a real human. And so a Groundlight employee, or what we call a cloud labeler, will review that image in real time and say, okay, that work cell setup is not correct. It essentially allows the machine vision system to learn from the answer. And so as a result, the system is also able to say, no, okay, it is learning from the human operator, essentially.
Yeah, so the human operator is like giving an answer in real time that allows the robot to continue working, but it's also providing data that retrains the model and makes it smarter over time.
Yes. So essentially then in real time, and again, we talked about how the notification can be from the teach pendant, but you can also set it up so that you get a text message or an email if there's ever an issue. And then the operator on the floor is notified in pretty much real time that, hey, here is an issue. And before any harm is caused, you are alerted and you can go back and fix it. Yep. And again, here's an example of an inspection report. We already talked about that. But that is at a high level why Groundlight works on day one and why it is able to train to your specifications and ensure that you have that extra layer of quality assurance and allows the cobot to run completely unattended. Okay, just checking to see if we have any questions in the chat. Nope. Okay, so how do you set up the Groundlight compute module? I'll probably let Tim lead a little bit more on this part.
Yeah, so I think this picture says it all, but basically it's a little computer, NVIDIA Jetson in a aluminum case, and you're going to bolt that in to the control box. There's a little panel that you can remove and put it in there. And there's a little screen that shows you the status of it. And then from there, you plug it into power, plug it into internet, and then hook up your cameras. It could be one camera or many cameras. And then usually you also want to hook up a tower light. You can see that in the bottom right corner there. And that will communicate the status of what's happening with Groundlight. So when it's submitting a query, it goes yellow. And then when it gets an answer, it goes either red or green. So commonly, if your cobot has a problem and it pauses, you'll see that light is red, and that'll be your sign that you need to go over there and see what went wrong. So yeah, that's the hardware setup.
Yeah, and we've actually had a couple of people set this up recently, and I think probably the thing that people ask us the most questions on is not necessarily how to set this up. We basically send you like a really detailed instruction manual. Most of the questions we have are like, hey, how do I formulate my detector? What questions should I ask? And that's where Tim is really able to offer a lot of great support. But honestly, this part, we haven't, knock on wood, we haven't heard of too many issues on this part. It's pretty straightforward. You really just plug it in.
Yeah.
Plug it in. Oh, we have a question here. We have, hi, is it possible to enlarge the slice? Cannot see it clear. Oh, the slides. The slides. Okay. We will be happy to send you the deck. I will make sure that you have access to the deck.
How's that? Is that better?
Is that better? Can you see the slides much better now? Let us know. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for that feedback. Yeah, we really want to make sure that you're seeing everything. I was saying earlier, like I feel like they're a little small.
Yeah, looks better now.
Yeah, and that's great because this slide is really showing you in detail. Here's what it looks like directly from the Teach Pendant when Groundlight is online.
So what you're seeing there in the upper right corner is the camera feed off of the robot. So you can open up that little widget, and that's actually super useful because you can have that open while you put the robot into free drive mode or while you're jogging it around. So you can kind of line up your shot and make sure the camera is looking at what it should be looking at.
Exactly. And then again, I mentioned this before, but this is what you'd look like if you choose a detector from the Teach Pendant.
Mm-hmm.
You set up the detector on dashboard.groundlight.ai from your computer. And then on the Teach Pendant, you can just select the detector. It'll automatically find those detectors that you've set up. And this is just a video overview of
Today I'm going to show you how to use Groundlight AI to improve the reliability of your machine tending applications.
I'm not going to show this video
once in a while we encounter. Over time, Groundlight AI is a simple.
But Tim is essentially showing how really simple it is to set up Groundlight on the Teach Pendant. So
right after that,
you basically click image query. You're selecting the detector.
You can browse through all the detectors that you created on Groundlight.ai. I have a detector here.
Yep. Okay. Oh, and yeah. So you select the detector, and then here is the camera settings. So you're choosing which camera to look at, right? The one that's on the robot arm or the control box?
In that example, I have two, and then there's also different settings that you can do, like zoom, and some cameras let you change the exposure. You'll see that in a bit. And then there's actually some new features on this page now since I made this video, where you can
And
crop
you
and
can adjust the
pan
zoom
around,
level.
which is useful if you
And
want to
some
just get some
cameras
small
support
part of
adjusting
the
the
image and
image
ask a
here.
question about it. And then
While
there's a
we're
button
here,
at the
we can
bottom that
submit
says
some
Add
example images to
and that's
Groundlight,
one of the
which will
ways
help
you can
provide
train
training data
the
for our
model. You can-
detector.
While you're here, just
So
tap
just click the
that.
button down here that says Add Example Image.
Yeah, you get this pop-up and
It
it
will
asks a
show the
question. Is the
prompt,
metal block
and you
properly
answer the
rooted to
question.
the device? And you can see a
And
reference
just a
image,
few
you
of
get to
these.
see what it normally looks like, and you can answer
If
yes
possible,
or no.
you should
And that
submit a
becomes
few
training data
no
for your
examples.
Yeah, that's great
Sometimes
because you don't necessarily want to wait until the bad things happen. What you can do is just mimic what an anomaly looks like.
Yeah, so that's kind of the process. You set up the detector, feed it a little bit of data so it's not starting from zero, and then as it runs, if it's unsure, it's going to raise its hand and you answer the question.
It's hard to do. You can't always simulate
After
anomalies, and
a few
sometimes you
hours
can't
of
even predict what they
operation,
might be.
it's
So
really sure what
don't
it's
feel
doing.
bad if you can't do
Yeah,
this.
in the
But in this
beginning, you
case,
can
it's pretty
expect
easy
that
for
in the
me
beginning,
to
it's going to
fake an
ask for
anomaly.
help a
So I'm
lot
going
from
to
the
do that.
humans, as it's learning to your specifications. And then pretty much afterwards, the machine learning model completely takes over.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons we offer the cloud escalation, because
All right, and the final tab we need to
there
look at
next to
is the
robot,
review settings.
You're not able to answer those questions.
These settings
You have
control
someone
what
in the cloud
happens when
answer it for
Groundlight
you,
is unsure.
and the robot can
The
continue
default
to
setting
run,
is to escalate
unattended.
locally to the
I
teach
guess we should
pendant.
talk about this screen here.
If-
So this is where you configure how or what happens when the robot's not sure. So that first checkbox says it'll pop up on the teach pendant and ask you. The bottom option there is to enable remote review, means it's going to a cloud operator. And then those are the two main options. And you could also have it force a local review of all yes or no answers. And typically I like to force local review on no answers because a no is generally the anomaly, like the block was not placed correctly. And if that happens, you really want to review that and give it a yes or no before it continues. So that's kind of a typical anomaly detection setup there.
Yeah. Whoops, we already saw this. Okay, so with that, that is pretty much the conclusion of our demo. And we invite you to reach out to us and we would be happy to set you up with an in-person demo. I believe a Universal Robot representative can come with Groundlight installed. And actually, how does have you seen the demo in person, a Universal Robot code?
No, but that is basically how it worked. We'd connect you with someone from Universal Robots. They could give you a demo, show you how Groundlight would work with that, and ultimately get you a cobot.
Yeah, but we're also happy to hop on a call with you and answer any questions you might have, talk a little bit about your application, and help you understand what anomalies can be detected. And so it's pretty straightforward. We've been seeing a lot of interest in this recently, and we're so excited that people are really starting to think about automation on the next level and incorporating machine learning into their robotic processes. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, with that, I just wanted to pause and see if there's any questions in terms of, whether it's about Universal Robots or about Groundlight's integration.
I was kind of curious if the people in the chat have cobots or they're considering getting cobots. I don't know if anyone wants to volunteer that information or ask some specific questions.
Is Groundlight only for the Universal Robot Cobot? That's a great question. So Groundlight right now offers an integration with Universal Robots Cobots. We also offer standalone computer vision solutions as well. So if you, for example, want to build a custom application, feel free to reach out to us. We also have a robotics integration in general. I think you can speak to our robotics capabilities.
Yeah, so we have a ROS package if you're a developer who's developing with robot operating system. We also have a Python SDK. So I don't know if anyone in the chat would consider themselves a developer and is building solutions, but if you are, we have those tools. Otherwise, you would buy one of our off-the-shelf integrations, and this is just an example of one that we have with Universal Robots.
Yeah, you can visit our website, groundlight.ai, and learn more about our computer vision tools. Groundlight, first and foremost, is a computer vision tool. We just happen to offer this off-the-shelf integration with Universal Robots as well. So yeah, curious if people already have a cobot or if they're considering one or if they have a different type of robot. Okay, so your university has several universal robots. That's great. We'd be happy to also, if you wanted to try out Groundlight, we'd be happy to, send you a Groundlight compute module if you want to check it out for yourself as a trial. So how about we sync up after this and we can see how we can get you to get some hands-on practice with it. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, and the reason why we do that is because we're really confident that it's really going to complement your existing processes already. We really think that you're going to be pretty excited about how this works. Tim has put a lot of work into this integration. So.
Yes.
And another thing is with our remaining time, we can also touch a little bit upon Polyscope 5 versus Polyscope X, because Tim has been already developing the Groundlight integration for Polyscope X. So what can people expect from Polyscope X specifically? First of all, what is Polyscope X for people who don't?
What is Polyscope? Maybe start there. So
Yeah.
Polyscope is the operating system that runs on the control box. So in that picture there, you see me holding a tablet. That's the robot teach pendant. If you look on that screen, you're seeing Polyscope, and that's how you program the robot and just operate it in general. So Polyscope 5 is kind of the current version, I would say. If you were to buy a Cobot today, I think that's what UR might recommend for you. But very soon they're going to start pushing Polyscope X. That's the next version, and it just looks a little nicer. It's more intuitive to use. But the main feature that they're adding is their AI accelerator. So the AI accelerator is a compute module that attaches to your control box and lets you do things with AI on edge. So in that version, we have a version of Groundlight that runs on edge. It doesn't have to go to the cloud every time to get an answer. It can ask the local model and get a super fast response. So that's the thing I'm most excited about in Polyscope X, is just the edge capabilities.
And you don't necessarily need to install the Groundlight compute module then, right? You can just download directly.
Oh, that's true. That's also very relevant for people who are considering getting it. In Polyscope X, there is no Groundlight compute module. It's built into their new control box. So that's just one less piece of hardware that you have to get, which is nice.
So we have a question: is Groundlight only software or an integration with hardware as well? I guess how to answer that. So we don't specialize in the hardware. Groundlight is software that runs on the hardware that Tim has configured, right? This Groundlight compute module.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So for a lot of our solutions, if you buy it, we're shipping you some piece of hardware, whether it's a NVIDIA Jetson or a Raspberry Pi or a big server rack. But we don't consider ourselves a hardware company. We're just shipping you those devices because we've loaded the software onto it and we know it's going to work well for you. We did make kind of a nice custom enclosure for the Groundlight compute module, so that was something our founder designed. But in general, we are a software company.
Yeah. So essentially, this is exactly the hardware that you get. But in theory, if you are a developer, you could also run Groundlight on your own piece of hardware. We just make it, in this case, we make it so it's a completely out-of-the-box solution for universal robots.
I'm wondering now, is anyone in the chat, would you consider yourself a developer? Do you code in Python or in any other languages?
Well, we have an automation robotics student.
Yeah, so I'm sure he does. So I just wanted to raise the point that we have our Python SDK, and you can set up a free account and download that. You just pip install Groundlight, and you can start to build your own applications if you want to take that path.
Well, there, you're getting really nerdy over here.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways you can harness Groundlight at this point. This is really especially useful if you have a business and you really honestly don't have developers in-house and you just want to make sure your cobot can harness machine vision, right? Mm-hmm. But if you have developers that are in-house, or if you are a developer, we'd be happy to walk you through how to build your custom application. So I think we have one more question coming in. All right, just making sure, does anyone have any final questions before we close out for today? Okay, Do you know ISAC Sim from NVIDIA? Is it possible to use Groundlight to drive Cobot Simulator in ISAC Sim?
Yes, I do know the Isaac Sim. Haven't worked with it a lot personally. Use it a bit in school, but haven't done that with anything Groundlight related. I would mention though that I was talking earlier about Polyscope X and the Universal Robots AI Accelerator. That is built using a lot of NVIDIA stuff. So they're using not the simulator yet, but they have like foundation pose for pose estimation and some other NVIDIA models built into that. So I am pretty familiar with that.
Great. Yeah, and it looks like we have some developers here who are dropping in. So we would love to just reach out to you and, kind of, I think we have a Python SDK guide, very easy to use. I have a very beginner knowledge of Python, and even I was able to go through the tutorial and create my first simple application, thanks to Tim's helpful guide. So we'd be happy to chat with you on that. Well, thank you guys so much. That concludes our session for CNC automation with Universal Robots, Cobots, and Groundlight's machine vision integration. Thank you so much for your wonderful questions. We're excited to see that you're excited about this, and you can probably expect me to reach out and just see if you have any other additional questions or if we can just continue the conversation. So,
All right.
yeah, thank you all so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.